Dr. Simeon Roger. Welcome back. This is the second in our system of spiritual life videos. Now, the first thing I want to get out of the way first is this whole problem of God. What I'd like to do first is suggest that we try to avoid the word God. And that may sound very strange for someone from my background, but here's the issue. When people in the Western world generally say God, there's a whole pile of intellectual baggage that goes along with that. So it's impossible to have a genuine discussion and be heard and communicate when we're using that word. So I prefer to use the term absolute reality, referring to the absolute reality behind the visible universe. Some people use the word source. That's okay. You can use the word God, source, absolute reality. You can use anything you want. That's fine. For now, when I say God, however, I am going to essentially be referring to this absolute reality. So, in other words, check your anthropomorphic ideas at the door. If you have any of that baggage around the word God, and you undoubtedly do, because everybody does. Now we'll get on to the meat of the matter, which is fundamentally for this video one thing. And that is that there are only three and only three, ways to view the entire universe from a spiritual point of view, if you wish. Or in spiritual life, there are really only three cosmologies you can have. Now, the first one is called Pantheism. Now, you've probably heard about Pantheism, and you may have an idea what it is already. Let's unpack the word. So the word pan in Greek means all or everything. The word theism comes from theos, meaning God. So pantheism essentially means everything is God. Everything is God. Well, what does that mean? Well, in pantheism, it usually has the idea that everything we see visibly around us is actually directly an expression of God. In fact, is God. You know, whether it's the mat I'm sitting on or the bookcase or whatever, all of it is God. In other words, it is not fundamentally different than God. It is not fundamentally different than this absolute reality. It is part and parcel of it. And for some versions of pantheism, the sort of corollary of that is that everything in the visible and invisible spectrum, if you will, is coextensive with God. In other words, it's kind of the limit of what God is. So that's pantheism. There is a second cosmology, which is a little bit more nuanced, called Panentheism. Panentheism. Okay, en means in, so Panentheism means God is in everything. So that's what panentheism is. One example of a panentheist worldview would be the mystical Christianity of the Christian East, that is Eastern Orthodoxy, for example. Panentheism essentially says the following. Suppose you have the created world. So God creates the world, everything we see, visible and not visible. However, that is not the extent of God. In panentheism, God is much greater than that and is of a fundamentally different nature than that. Excuse me, I have a cramp in my foot. Is of a fundamentally different nature. So, whereas pantheism is saying that everything we see, including the bookcase or this stuff or whatever, is of one substance or one essence with God, panentheism is saying, actually, no, it isn't. However, God penetrates it completely. Completely at the tiniest level, everything is totally penetrated by God. So that God, or the absolute reality, is, as they say in the ancient liturgies, everywhere present and filling all things. So that's panentheism. The third and final cosmology you can have is called Panextheism. And you might immediately have an idea what that means, right? So Panextheism means God is outside of everything. In Panextheism, God creates the world, the universe, everything visible and invisible, however, remains outside it, not around and all through it, but outside it and remote from it. In other words, God and creation actually don't, on the level of sort of the stuff they're made of, they don't connect. There is no connection there. And that's an idea actually that was very prominent in pre-Christian Greek philosophy and got sucked into two systems that we know very well. Western Christianity, meaning Roman Catholicism and Protestantism, and Islam. Panextheism teaches God is outside of everything, and this is where it gives rise automatically to that whole idea of the God in the sky who is remote, who communicates with you only by telling you his will, often through some intermediary, and telling you to obey. So it's a very different spiritual result than you get through Panentheism, where God is immediately accessible, or Pantheism, where God is immediately accessible. So very, very different. Now, why would I tell you all this? Well, again, it sounds very academic, but it's not. It's fundamentally important, because Pantheism and Panentheism, from a spiritual point of view, you can make progress with those. Panextheism, you're dead in the water. You're going nowhere fast. So, there are a lot of people around us who think, spiritual life, I just want to feel spiritual. I just want to feel blissful, feel spiritual. I'll just, meditate, whatever. And it's all about feeling. Well, that really doesn't cut it. That's saying that you don't need a theoretical understanding of spiritual life. It's a bit like saying, well, I'm going to be traveling to this, I'm traveling in a foreign country, but I don't know anything about this country. However, even though I know nothing about it, even where it is, I'm not going to use a map and I'm not going to use GPS. What are your chances of even getting there, let alone traveling in that country? Not good. And that's what it means if you have no spiritual no theoretical understanding of spiritual life. You have to know what the map looks like. And we'll draw out a little bit more later. I'm Dr. Simeon Roger, and that's it for now. See you soon.